Perhaps you're familiar with Charles Dickens's famous novel, A Tale of Two Cities. It's one of my personal favorites, A Tale of Two Cities. Well, many years before Charles Dickens wrote A Tale of Two Cities, there was another Tale of Two Cities, so-called, written by a Christian named Augustine. The book was not called A Tale of Two Cities. It was called The City of God. And it traced the entire history up to Augustine's own day, of course, of the great conflict and battle between God and his people, the city of God on one hand, and the enemies of God and his people, the city of man, on the other hand, a conflict carried out on the world stage with the forces of wickedness, of course, behind the scenes in the unseen world. And Psalm 9 truly draws us into this great conflict between the city of God and the city of man, between God and his people on the one hand, and the enemies of God and his people on the other. Verse 13, O Lord, says David, see how my enemies persecute me. That theme of persecution is not being introduced for the first time here in Psalm 9. We've already encountered it, and it will weave its way through the entire book of Psalms. And what we see here in Psalm 9, very significantly and importantly, is that within this tale of two cities, if we can call it that for now, we have another tale, a tale of two judgments. What are those two judgments? Well, the first one is God's present and ongoing judgment, or judgments, we can say, being poured out upon his enemies in this life. It's happening every day. It is happening all around us. God is never off of his throne. He is never away from his throne of judgment in this life, not even for a moment. Verse 7. The Lord reigns forever. He has established his throne for judgment. It's not going anywhere. Verse 16, the Lord is known by his justice. The wicked are ensnared by the work of their hands. That's the first judgment, as we consider this tale of two judgments here in Psalm 9, God's present, ongoing judgment of his enemies in this life. But there is a second judgment that we are reminded of and taught of here in Psalm 9 and throughout the entire book of Psalms, and that is the final judgment, the great, comprehensive, cosmic, great judgment that God will execute in the last day at the end of all things, where nothing or no one will fly under the radar. Returning to verse 7 here, the Lord reigns forever. He has established his throne for judgment. It's not going anywhere. Verse 8, and he will judge the world in righteousness. Verse 19, O Lord, let not man triumph, and let the nations be judged in your presence. That day is coming. So why two judgments, we might ask? Why two judgments? Why a tale of two judgments as far as God's dealings with this world are concerned? Why does God not pour out all of his justice and judgments in this life upon his enemies? Why do we have to wait for a final judgment? Or why does God not reserve it all for the final judgment, the last great day? Well, back to the city of God and Augustine. Augustine had a very good answer to that question, and that was this: if God did not show any of his judgments, of his justice in this life, then sinners would arrogantly assume that God will not judge the world in righteousness at the last great day. On the other hand, if God were to pour out all of his justice in this life and not reserve any for the last great day, then sinners, God's enemies, who are feeling safe, who often feel safe in this life because they have, for the time being, escaped God's just judgments in this life, they may never be awoken or aroused from their slumber to a point of dreading the judgment to come. So God, in his infinite wisdom, has ordained to judge in this life as well as to finally and fully and cosmically and comprehensively judge all people and all things at the end. And how do we escape the judgment of God? Well, we turn back to Psalm 2, which Reverend Scott Wilkinson helpfully expounded for us a number of weeks ago, but let me just read verse 12, excuse me. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry and you be destroyed in your way. For his wrath can flare up in a moment. The Son will be the judge at that last great day. But blessed are all who take refuge in him. Blessed are all who take refuge in him. Psalm 9.